I hear a bunch of people say that the Jove are gone when I thought that they were just hidden away. Would you be able to say what happened to them? Yes, they're gone. Um, so in Inheritance, it is revealed by Venial that less than 100 Jove remained at the time in New Eden at the time of the explosion of W477 TAC-P, also known as Caroline Star, which was 2016. And they probably have diminished since then. The vast majority of Jove people left. We don't know what left means exactly, but they were afraid that the destruction of W477 TAC-P could have ripped apart the entirety of New Eden, and so they were fleeing the disaster. That said, I sincerely believe that one of the things that CCP did in 2016 was that everybody wanted more focus on the Jove. Everybody wanted the Jove to be more into it and to explore the Jove more. But the CCP kind of backed themselves into a bit of a corner there. They had created this race that was both very, very powerful because they needed a Deus Ex Machina, right? They needed to have a thing that's able to provide the technology that nobody else has. This kind of more omnipotent race that can like bestow things upon the lesser races, i.e., us. Um, so that's one thing. But then on the other hand, they needed that race to be not so impactful as to trivialize everything else within the story, right? The Capsuleers have to be the main focus. And if there's this Deus Ex Machina always running around, then like that's the focus, not the players, right? Not the Capsuleers. So hence the Jovian disease, right? The Jove are an incredibly advanced species, but they are a species in decline, a shadow of a shadow. Yes, Tolkien elves. I say that I make allusions to the elves when I discuss what happened to the Jove. But there are dwindling numbers of people who have a broken biology. They don't even remember their own past. When they try to show off their power, they fuck it up. The ambassador wanted to show off the might of the Jove by teleporting and arriving at every single one of the empires, all 4 empires in a single day. They shattered his body into a million pieces and had to ask the Capsuleers to bring the pieces back together. Right? Like the Jove aren't perfect either. But the problem is that like where else can we go with the third Empire Jove, the Jovian Directorate, right? They are a broken people, a species on the way out. No, the far more I say species because they've altered their biology. They're no longer able to interbreed with humans. In fact, they're no longer able to interbreed, from my understanding. Right. Enter the drifters. The problem is that the third Empire Jove aren't the interesting ones. Okay? It is the Shrouded Days. It's the Second Empire. It's the First Empire. It's Molenbolg. I can't remember his name now. That's the stuff that was actually interesting about the Jove. So what does CCP do? CCP shuttles away the Third Empire Jove. In Inheritance, they literally pass on the mantle of the Jovian Empire to the Society of Conscious Thought, right? So now Third Empire Jove are no longer a consideration. However, the sins of the past return. The Drifters and the Triglavians reflect an earlier Empire Jove. The Triglavians and the Drifters are the Shrouded Days come back. So that is how they're exploring the Jovian plotline and how all of these things interconnect. Does that make sense? Uh, yeah, you're right. I mean, I guess species isn't necessarily but I like using the word. As a capsuleer, can I canonically make children? I think. Oh boy, I'm pretty sure that they address this in Empyrean Age, but I can't remember where it actually lands on it. I know that they can have sex. I don't think that they can actually procreate unless unless that's specifically arranged. Because, like, it doesn't actually have your real biology. It would just be the biomass. I would love to be able to explore Jove space through rare wormhole. Well, again, in Inheritance, we see a view of Jove space, which has always led me to believe that that's the crown jewel of this entire kind of experiment. In the end, that's probably where we're headed. Something is going on in Jove space, right? I don't know if the Sancha has infected it. I don't know if the Drifters have infected it. I don't know if the Triglavians want to get there, but there's tons of artifacts. There's tons of technology, and it's currently decaying to nanorot. Yeah, the Jove were basically a stand-in for CCP for the most part. That's what I'm saying, like, omnipotent and yet not able to be relevant to the day-to-day. Does that's probably a decent way to put it. Omnipotent, but intentionally irrelevant. Do you think the Sancha made it to Jove space? The Sancha absolutely made it to Jove space. The last message that we ever received from the Jovian Directorate was that they had kicked Sancha out of their space.
Warping to Stargate.
In the book by Tony Gonzalez, Templar 1, it is said that the Jove are all dead. I think it's mere speculation than relevance.
07 to you, Sawdeath. Well, we know not all the Jove are dead because Venal wasn't dead. Everything we know, I will say this, okay? In order to properly understand Templar 1, you must read the Odyssey. The Odyssey is integral to understanding that chapter in Templar 1 in which Grayus explains the Jove. More importantly, it explains Grayus. The problem that we have is that the entire testament of what happened is by a hologram of a being that we know for a fact is compromised by the Adheduani. We just don't know how much of his story was manipulated. That said, there is evidence to show a lot of that story was in fact true because Vincent, man, last time I told this story, I didn't remember his name either. The Templar 1 did in fact, and we saw through his eyes, the construct and the other and stuff like that. So the broader scope of what happened, who the sleepers are and what the other is of course true. But the actual narrative of what happened to the Jove very likely was manipulated by the Adheduani. But I didn't quite, okay, I watched your Who Are the Triglavians video, but didn't quite understand your argument as to why they aren't the Talican. Would you be able to go into that? I am increasingly believing that they are the Talican. Did I say that they aren't? They are, it would appear that they are either the Talican or the modifier class of the Jovians. But I would argue that the vast majority of the evidence points to them being a derivative of the Talican. Yeah, the modifier. Right. Those are the two arguments. I made that argument not because I believe that, but that's what most lore people believe. Now, part of that has to do with the fact that allegedly, and I don't remember hearing it, and I think I tried to verify it independently and failed, that CCP Delegate Zero confirmed that the Triglavians are not any previous faction. However, it was also said in such a way that was kind of like apparently ambiguous. You know, he's kind of a coy way of answering things. So maybe they're not that anymore. But there's actually a lot of really good evidence that they are, in fact, the Talican. The modifier class comes from the fact that, you know, their entire existence being about mutation and modification. And if you think about if what we're exploring is, in fact, the Shrouded Days and the things leading up to the Shrouded Days, then that would be a war between the modifiers and the statics. We know what happened to the statics. They became the sleepers by and large. But we don't know how many, if any, of the modifiers were driven out. That's why you would go with the modifiers. That said, we don't actually know the relationship between the modifiers and the Talican. If you believe if you want to know my opinion, by the way, the grand theory of everything video, I figured out Eve lore, is probably a much better one for that. The thing, so even since I've made that video, other evidence has come to my attention that continues to reinforce to me that they are in fact the Talican. The most recent one being that a lot of the language that are ascribed to explicit. Hey, sugar baby, 07. Everybody wave to my new commander in chief in Final Fantasy 14. So sure, like the sleepers aren't the Jove, the Triglavians aren't the Talican. Yeah, exactly. Sure, like the sleepers aren't the Jove, right? Yeah. Exactly. But if they are the Talican, the question is, how did they become the Talican, right? Like the Talican had the infection or had the quarantine breach, but we don't actually know what happened to them. It would make sense if they did flee into the Abyss.